Okay, welcome and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Medicine Information Evening webinar. My name is Karina and I'm one of the staff members here that works in the Future Students team, and I'll be your host for this evening. Before we begin, I would like to go through some housekeeping. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should be able to see that there is a Q&A function enabled for you. You are welcome to submit questions throughout the presentation. We will have some staff working behind the scenes to be able to answer these questions for you as we go throughout the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to access this webinar on demand. And I'm really pleased that so many of you are joining us online. To begin, I would like to introduce you to those panelists that are joining us here this evening. Firstly, I'd love to welcome you and introduce you to our guest speaker this evening, Associate Rita Partanen, who is the Director of our Rural Clinical School. Also joining us online is three of our current medical students. We have Eugene, Samantha, and Brianna, and you'll get to hear a little bit more about their student journey later in the presentation. So, to begin, welcome. I would firstly like to acknowledge traditional lands on the lands on which we are meeting and pay my respects to both the ancestors, their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and recognise the valuable contributions that our Indigenous community have both here in Australia and on a global scale. I would also like to firstly acknowledge the commitment to diversity and inclusion here at the University of Queensland. We recognise and accept all of our broad community and that individuality of welcoming them to our safe campus, our inclusive workplace with both strong community connections and partnerships as well. So we have a lot to get through this evening. As you'll see here on the agenda, we'll firstly be going through the medicine program at the university. We're going to be going through our footprint, the various medical pathways into our Doctor of Medicine program. We'll be looking at the entry requirements, and then at the end we'll be going through our student presentations and having a student panel, and then hopefully having some time at the very end to be able to have a Q&A. As I mentioned at the beginning, you are welcome to submit your questions as we go throughout the presentation. I would now like to hand it over to Rita to begin our presentation. Rita, if you'd like to ask for access to the presentation, we'll then get it started. Okay, thank you so much, Rita.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name's Rita Partanen, and I'm the Director of UQ's Rural Clinical School. And some reason that did not change. Sorry about that. So first up, we're about, now it's catching up on me. I clicked too many times. There's a bit of a lag. I apologise. I need to go back to the screen before. As I do that, you'll just bear with me a moment. So we're going to talk a little bit about what to expect in a medical career, but first up, I just wanted to share around, what UQ's medical program's about. It's around trying to prepare the next generation of doctors, and that includes making sure that we get the right people into the program, people with genuine interest in other people, wanting to make a difference, to be effective from the first day you become an intern, continue to grow through your careers, and be distinctively critical thinkers, be socially accountable and global leaders in health. At UQ, we've been educating medical students, or have had a medical school for over 80 years, and we've graduated more than 13,000 graduates across the globe, and we were the first medical school in Queensland. So what to expect along your journey, and that's we've got the slide now, which for those of you from high school, at the end of high school you have the opportunity to join the medical pathway. Others who've maybe not come from high school or during their degrees elsewhere have now decided that they want to do medicine, can join the medical school after their other degrees. Then once you finish medical school, that is just the start of your medical career. So medical school provides you with the base medical degree, and then you have a 2-year internship in a hospital, based in the hospital, you can have community placements as well. And generally, placements include having placements within medicine departments, surgery and emergency medicine. But increasingly, there are placements in general practice, but also in other discipline areas such as paediatrics, obstetrics, gynecology, and psychiatry. After you finish your 2-year internship, you become a pre-vocational doctor, and we call them junior house officers, either year 3, year 4, and then, sorry, junior house officer is your 3rd year out, senior house officer is then the 4th year, and a principal house officer is generally the 5th year. Sometimes you can become a PHO in your 3rd or 4th year, depending on where you're working. These collectively, interns, JHOs, SHOs, and PHOs are called resident medical officers. You might have seen that terminology. Summary. My slide does not want to move along. The medical career, you then have to go to registrar to, oh, geez. You would think this is the first time I've run a webinar, but I can assure you that is not the case. The registrar, this is where you're now on your vocational training, as we call it. So you join a training pathway to become a GP, to become a physician or a surgeon or a psychiatrist. And once you're on a training pathway that you've applied through the colleges, and that's like the Royal Australian College of General Practice, the Royal College of Physicians, the Royal College of Surgeons, you become a registrar to be that specialty. And that varies in length of time, from anywhere from 4 years, depending on what kind of specialty is, it may be up to 10 years. Once you've reached your final training, you may have the opportunity to complete a fellowship in a subspecialty area, and then you finish all your qualifications and you're considered a specialist or a consultant. And this group of doctors is then called a senior medical officer. And of that senior medical officers, you will know some of these people. These are surgeons, these are ophthalmologists, these are general practitioners or rural generalists, general physicians, cardiologists, all of those things. So it's a long career path, and that's what you expect in a medical career. Along the way, you may have other opportunities to get involved in different aspects of medicine, including research, including education, and other areas. There we go. Okay, the Doctor of Medicine program is a 4-year program. It's a graduate program, so everyone does need to undertake a bachelor degree prior, or a minimum of a bachelor degree prior. Throughout the program, we have a new Doctor of Medicine program, and we are following the programmatic assessment. We have introduced earlier clinical experiences into year 2, and there's some greater choice with selectives and electives throughout the program. And we have introduced a particular focus of transition to practice at the end of 4th year to help ensure that our graduates are as best prepared as possible for internship. When you join us at UQ, you will become familiar with the circle of what the medical program looks like. And we have 6 key areas that the curriculum is based around, including the critical thinker, scientist and scholar, the dynamic learner and educator, the advocate for health improvement, partner and team player, kind and compassionate professional, and safe, effective clinician. Making sure that all of our graduates are competent in all of these areas ensures that we are producing graduates who are competent, safe, and able to care for the communities that they will be working in. Okay, our medical program overview, they are year-long courses and they obviously have 4 years, and the first year is a foundations course, 4 days of structured teaching and 1 day of clinically focused teaching. Then year 2 is developing skills in medicine, and this again is a year-long 3 days of structured clinical teaching, including 2 days of clinical placements, and there's also ongoing clinical focused teaching. Year 3 is an immersion, again, across a range of discipline areas, predominantly medicine, surgery, paediatrics, obstetrics and gynecology, and mental health. And then there's the last year is advanced practice and transition to internship. As I said, the last 10 weeks of this program is designed to ensure that you are ready to commence work as an intern upon graduation. Okay, so being a student does have challenges, and we know that at university students can find that they need extra support, and we do know that in medicine that can be the case as well. And so at UQ we actually have a specifically dedicated medical student support service. We have a personal advisor network that you can opt into, and this is where you can you'll be allocated a personal advisor who's not necessarily part of the university but a doctor in the community who can give you guidance and advice around your journey through medicine. And there are a bunch of UQ medical student societies that you can join, become involved in to help grow and build your networks and connections and give you support along the way as well. I do not know why my computer is not playing the game tonight, not allowing me to easily transition, but there we go.
Sorry to interrupt, Rita. Do you want us to try and stop share and redo the control, see if that helps?
Perhaps that would be, let's go with this slide and we'll give it one more go.
All right.
Oh, there it's just done it on its own. Maybe we do need to stop sharing. Sorry, everybody. I'll just give up my remote control and give that back to Karina, and perhaps we can try again. I'm not sure what's happened there.
That's okay, Rita. Would you like to retry share screening? And we'll see if that hopefully makes it a little bit more easier for you to take control of the presentation. I'll just wait for you to send that request through.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I've approved that now for you. Let's see how it goes this time.
Okay. It does not seem to be. Let me just see. Okay. I'm not being able to actually. I'll end show and let's see if we can share again. Okay. All right, that seemed to work better. Okay. So just again, going back to what do we hope in our students and our graduates is that you become great team workers and have high level of communication skills. As we said before, a real interest in people. This is who you are, looking after people and caring for people. You do need to be good problem solvers, little detectives around trying to find out what's wrong with people and working in the team together. And you need to, medicine is a career of lifelong learning. It doesn't stop when you stop at medical school. It doesn't stop when you finished your vocational training. You need to learn skills to continue to lifelong learn. And you need to be very well organised, but also be flexible and adaptable. I thought this was going to work. So the medical program, and I'm trying to do this again. So we're going to cover a little bit about the UQ footprint. So where do we train students? So we have the Australian enterprise, which is the Greater Brisbane Clinical School and the Rural Clinical School. But we also have the Ochsner Clinical School. So we actually have a group of students who come from Ochsner, which is based in New Orleans in Louisiana in the USA. So we have students who come for their first 2 years here into Brisbane, and then they return back and join the Ochsner Clinical School in New Orleans. And they do clinical placements back here in Australia as well. But they also then enter the US medical workforce. The students who become part of the Greater Brisbane Clinical School and the Rural Clinical School then join, and obviously the Australian medical workforce. So the Greater Brisbane Clinical School is based in Greater Brisbane, as it suggests, and you can see the list of hospitals and health services and areas where learning occurs. So it's the main hospitals: Children's Health Queensland, Greenslopes, Ipswich, Mater, the PA South Side, Prince Charles Hospital on the north side, Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital, primary care across the city of Brisbane and Ipswich, and then St Lucia is, as we call that, the MD Learning Hub, and that's where Year 1 is predominantly, and some of Year 2 as well. And then in green is the Rural Clinical School. Our 4 major sites are Rockhampton, Bundaberg, Hervey Bay and Toowoomba. Then we are also increasing placements in Gladstone, you'll see there, which is just south of Rockhampton. And then across the southern half of Queensland there, we have over 55 locations that are in rural and remote areas where students have experiences for learning there. This computer is deciding to apologies, everybody. So the Greater Brisbane Clinical School, this is the medical school. For those of you who don't know, this is in Hurston, and you can learn more about the Greater Brisbane Clinical School on the web. Then we've got the medical school footprint in the rural sites. So we've partnered as part of our medical pathways with the regional universities of the University of Southern Queensland for our Darling Downs Southwest medical pathway, and with Central Queensland University for our regional medical pathway. And you'll learn more a bit more about those in a moment. Our footprints, these are the buildings that we have in our current sites of Rockhampton, Hervey Bay, Bundaberg and Toowoomba. There is definitely a little glitch in my system tonight. So the Rural Clinical School, we've been educating medical students for over 20 years now, and we've had more than 1,600 students who've come through our regional clinical units. Predominantly, this has been across the final 2 years of the medical program, and you can also find more about us at the website of rcs.medicine.uq.edu.au. So a little bit about our pathways. How can you join us at UQ? There are 2 entry pathways for the Doctor of Medicine. There's a provisional entry, which is entry from high school, and the graduate entry, as we mentioned before, and those who've got a previous degree and meet the entry requirements. So there are many pathways to medicine. So Central Queensland Wide Bay Regional Medical Pathway, provisional entry is one of those. You need to sit the UCAT, as you will for all of the provisional entry, but we'll just go through this pathway to begin with. You'll do your bachelor degree with Central Queensland University, and then you'll join us at the Rural Clinical School in the regions of Central Queensland, which is Rockhampton initially, but then across Gladstone and potentially other rural areas, including Emerald and others. If you're part, and the Wide Bay, sorry, as well, and Wide Bay, which is the first, will be Bundaberg, and Hervey Bay is where you're based for the Wide Bay Regional Medical Pathway. Then we have the Darling Downs Southwest Medical Pathway provisional entry, again, the UCAT. This time you do your undergraduate degree with University of Southern Queensland. So that degree is the Bachelor of Biomedical Science, medicine, a pathway to medicine, and Central Queensland undergrad degree is the Bachelor of medical science, medical pathway. So that's the 2 degrees that those 2 regional universities offer. Once you graduate from the bachelor undergrad degrees with those universities, and you get a GPA of at least 5, and you then can matriculate and join us for the MD at the Rural Clinical School. There are a few glitches in my system to do this. I wonder, Karina, whether I should ask you to see if you could move the.
Yeah, Rita, I'm happy to help to see if I can control it from my end to move through the slides. So let's just see what happens there if we can keep clicking through the presentation. It doesn't seem to want to work from my end. So
it is working for me again at the moment, so we will keep going. And I apologise, everybody, for why this is happening. So we also have the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander pathway as part of the regional medical pathways, as well as the Greater Brisbane clinical pathway. And you can do your undergrad with any of the 3 universities, as well as going on to the Rural Clinical School or the Greater Brisbane Clinical School. Oh, geez. Has that gone back to you at all, Karina? Because it tells me that it's gone back to you now.
Let's try. We'll see if we can move through. Yep, so it looks like I have control now.
Okay, so we got the Greater Brisbane Clinical School, as I said, for the students who come through the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander pathways. It is optional for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander students to sit the UCAT. There are other criteria to meet for that pathway. And then from the Greater Brisbane Clinical School, if we keep moving on, we've then got the Greater Brisbane Clinical Provisional Entry, which again, the UCAT, you will then do your undergrad at University of Queensland and then join the Greater Brisbane Clinical School. You will have opportunities to undergo some placements rurally, as well as do the rural students have opportunities to undertake some placements in metropolitan Brisbane as well. But all of those will reach internship, and at UQ we have the regional training hubs, which also help support students transition to internship and support around in the junior doctor space. After your internship and time, you'll then, as we've talked about before, I think, Karina, if we have the next. Yep, we have the postgraduate training that we referred to, and then you achieve your fellowship and specialty qualifications. Okay, so next slide. So I've got a couple of scenarios to discuss. So Ruben is a Year 12 student from Bundaberg, and he's going to apply for the provisional entry through the CQU Pathway to Medicine program. He undertakes his 3-year undergraduate Bachelor of Medical Science Pathway to Medicine at the CQU Bundaberg campus. He gets a GPA of at least 5 and graduates on time, and then he commences his 4-year Doctor of Medicine with us at UQ at the Bundaberg Regional Clinical Unit. So that's Ruben's entry pathway. Then we've got Lena. She's a Year 12 student from Warwick. She applies for the UQ MD program through the University of Southern Queensland's medicine pathway, the Darling Downs Southwest Medical Pathway. She undertakes her 3-year undergraduate degree with Bachelor of Biomedical Science Medicine Pathway at UniSQ Toowoomba campus. Again, she gets at least a GPA of 5, and she then joins us at UQ to complete her 4-year Doctor of Medicine based at the Toowoomba Regional Clinical Unit initially. The Toowoomba Regional Clinical Unit also, as part of the medical pathways, students will also have time and experiences in the southwest, so potentially in Roma, Charleville, St George as well. Similarly for Ruben at the Bundaberg campus, he will have opportunity to go to Hervey Bay from his 3rd year. So what are the entry requirements? So the entry requirements for the provisional entry of Greater Brisbane is that you need to be a school leaver. You need to complete year 12 in English, and that's for everyone, whether that's just Greater Brisbane or coming through the Rural Clinical School. You need to get an ATAR of 95 or above, and that's after adjustments, and we'll talk about those adjustments shortly, or to have an IB score of 37 plus. So the assessment criteria ultimately is based on your final ATAR score, your UCAT score, and your multiple mini interview score. You apply through QTAC, through the provisional entry pathway that closes at the end of September, and successful applicants will receive their offers in January, in the January offer round. You will, however, if you're offered an MMI, you will be doing that in November. The provisional entry pathways through the medical pathways, through UniSQ or CQUni. Again, it's the same criteria. The only difference for the two programs is that at UniSQ, they do have some requirements for subjects in senior, and you can see that being English, general mathematics, biological science or chemistry. And at CQU, again, they have English, then mathematical methods, and one of biology, chemistry, or physics. So if you're joining us through wanting to apply through the medical pathways, you need to make sure that you have have done those subjects for being able to do their undergraduate degree. And we'll talk about the adjustment factors a little bit more in a moment. Okay. What is UCAT? So UCAT is a 2-hour-based computer-based test, and there's 5 different areas: the verbal reasoning, decision-making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. You must be in your final year of school, so year 12, to sit this test. The testing takes place in July and August each year. You do need to apply by the 17th of May, and the fee for this year is $325. There are some late registrations possible for a couple of weeks after, but the fee increases each time as well. So try to, if you're going to be doing it, make sure you book it at the earlier by the initial closing date, so you don't have a higher fee. Thanks. So we've talked about those different components. There's different number of questions in those, and there's a different timing allocated for each of those components of the UCAT test. Move on. And we've kind of talked a little bit about this around the different topics, but verbal reasoning is about looking at your ability to think logically about written information. Decision making, again, looks at your ability to apply logic to reach a decision or a conclusion, to be able to evaluate arguments, and to analyse statistical information. There's also abstract reasoning, and this looks at your ability to identify patterns and relationships between shapes. There's quantitative reasoning. This looks at your ability to solve numerical problems. And then there's situational judgment. And this is assessing your judgment regarding real-world healthcare related scenarios. And we'll talk a little bit more about preparing for the UCAT. Thanks. So it's really important to prepare. When I've spoken to students over the years, many of them tell me that they often actually treat the UCAT as another subject to help them in year 12, to help them make sure they allocate some time. The UCAT score and your UCAT test is the first barrier to getting into the next step into medicine. Your MMI offer is based on your UCAT score. So it doesn't matter if you get a 99 ATAR at the end of everything. If you haven't spent time and got a reasonable score in your UCAT, then you won't be offered an MMI, and then therefore you cannot get into medicine. So make sure you look at the free online materials. There's lots of materials now available, and that is all you need to do. Is you just need to go through those materials, look at them, spend time on them, look at the UCAT official YouTube channel, and just spend time doing the tests and questions that are available free for you when you register. So just a bit of an example of why UCAT's so important. So Shreya, she does spend a lot of time preparing for UCAT. She does all the questions available, and so she's ready for the big day. She scores 3,140, and she is invited to partake and passes the MMI. She receives an ATAR of 96, and she is then offered a provisional entry to medicine at UQ. However, Hugo, he doesn't think he needs to prepare for the UCAT very much. He doesn't spend much time. He gets a lowish score of 2,550, and unfortunately, he doesn't receive an invitation for an MMI. However, his ATAR is 99, but he can't get offered, and so he isn't offered a provisional entry to medicine at UQ because he wasn't ever offered an interview for the MMI. Wasn't ever offered an opportunity to come for an MMI interview. So it's really important. So the MMI interviews are also important to part of our selection process, and this is assessing the non-academic qualities such as kind and compassion, integrity, communication skills, adaptability, those sorts of things. As we said before, you are selected on this shortlisted for the MMI due to your UCAT score. The multi-mini interviews give us, as I said, that non-academic quality that we need in doctors, people who are curious, people who care, people who are good communicators, as well as what we need in our medical program to be, to ensure that we are producing doctors who are safe and competent and can care for the communities they will be working within. So how do they work? So all MMIs will be online through Zoom. There's 8 stations, and you have there's an individual examiner per station. So you'll have 8 different examiners across your MMIs. At each station, applicants are presented with a prompt and have 2 minutes to review this and read this and think about the question. And then you'll have 7 minutes to discuss your ideas and thoughts and approach to that prompt with the interviewer. Each examiner then rates that out of 10, and so therefore your maximum score is 80 across those 8 stations. So just a little bit about the graduate entry. So there's approximately 135 places for graduate entry. You need to have completed your undergraduate degree, which includes the prerequisites in the last 10 years, and you need to have maintained your grade point average GPA of at least 5. You also need to sit a test, but this one is the GAMSAT test, and you need to score a minimum of 50 in the 3 sections. So the graduate entry, you have your undergraduate, you sit your GAMSAT, and then you're offered for the MMI interview. So the prerequisites, just to remind you, and this came in 2022, is the integrative cell and tissue biology and the systems physiology. And there are a bunch of equivalent courses, and if you go to the UQ website, you'll be able to look up your course and find out if it's whether that is an equivalent course and accepted as the prerequisites or not, or whether you may need to do a bridging subjects to meet those requirements. Thanks. And so there are many pathways to medicine. And once again, this is the university graduate pathway. And so if you're a graduate, you need to do a minimum of a 3-year bachelor degree, and you apply in your final year or after you've completed. You can join us in the Central Queensland Wide Bay Regional Medical Pathway. And again, you will join us then at the Rural Clinical School if you go that pathway. You need to sit the GAMSAT, first, and then you join us at the Rural Clinical School. Next, you'll do if you want to come through the Darling Downs Southwest Medical Pathway, again, you'll need to sit the GAMSAT, and then you'll come to join us at the Rural Clinical School as well. Then we obviously have the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander graduate entry pathway as well. The GAMSAT is optional, but both the GAMSAT and the UCAT are recommended for the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander students as well. And you can come to the Rural Clinical School, or you can go through into the Greater Brisbane Clinical School. And then, of course, there is the pathway where you join the Greater Brisbane Graduate Entry Pathway, sit the GAMSAT again, and then join the Greater Brisbane Clinical School. And once again, once you graduate from us at either the Rural Clinical School or the Greater Brisbane Clinical School, you'll do your internship. And then again, once you finish your junior pre-vocational years, you'll go into your postgraduate training, vocational training, and become a fellow and your specialty completion at the end of that training. Okay, so the end of the pathway is the same no matter what you have at the start. So the GAMSAT testing is offered twice a year. Obviously, the March ones are already done. So the next ones for graduate entry is 13th to 15th of September. The fee is a little higher at $549. The 2 testing sites in Queensland are Brisbane and Townsville. If you have a rural background, that will be adjusted and you meet the rural background criteria, which is 10 years cumulatively or 5 years consecutively, having lived in a rural, regional, rural, remote area, which is in the modified Monash of MMM 2 to 7. That adjustment points, you get 2 additional points to your GAMSAT score. The GAMSAT has 3 separately timed sections: reasoning in humanities and social sciences, written communication, and reasoning in biological and physical sciences. Okay. So in medicine, for overall, there is 270 domestic places available each year. 135 are preserved for the MD provisional, as we said before, 135 for the direct entry. These are all Commonwealth supported places, so they're all funded, and then they will either, you can pay the fee, HECS fee straight up, or you can get a HECS step from that. There are bonded medical places available, non-bonded medical places, as well as the rural access scheme. 40 of those places, so 28%, are part of the bonded medical places. This means that if you get a bonded medical place, is that you have a commitment to give a 3-year period of return to service. And this is done over an 18-year period. You can do half of this, so 18 months of that 3 years can be done in your pre-vocational junior doctor years, can include internship. The other half is then completed after your fellowship training. The bonded places generally do have a slightly lower entry requirement, and they do have their own provisional entry codes as well. So you do need to make sure that you look at that when you apply through QTAC. Thanks. So the admission schemes that we referred to in the adjustments, so we have the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pathway. As I said, there are some other factors in that. This admission pathway considers your previous formal education and a range of factors such as your employment history, academic abilities, personal interests, references, and you have an interview as well for that entry pathway. As I said before, 28.5% actually of the places in year 1 are bonded medical places. Then the subject incentive scheme or bonus points. So if you can get up to a maximum of 5 adjustment points or bonus points to your ATAR, and 2 of those can be achieved by a language other than English, 2 by specialist maths, or 1 by doing a university level enrichment course concurrently with your senior program. You can also get 2 for rural background, and that's a rural background scheme. And 28% of the first year cohort need to be of rural background. So that's a Commonwealth government requirement. And the rural background, again, as I said before, is 10 years cumulatively or 5 years consecutively having lived in a rural community. And you do need to provide evidence of that. And both at QTAC and GAMSAT, or GEMSAS, I should say, for the graduate entry, they give you advice on what that information needs to look like. In our medical pathways, you also get in the regions, you also get an additional point to your ATAR if you are a CQ Wide Bay student, or if you're a Darling Downs Southwest student and also meet that rural background criteria. So you get an extra point for living in those regions. Okay. The rural background subquota, as I mentioned a little bit before. So this really means that rural applicants are competing against other rural applicants for a place in the MD rather than against students from metropolitan areas. So this is, as I said, it's 28% must be from a rural background, and that's the criteria. And that's for all medical schools have a background criteria, not just at UQ. And you still need to sit the other entry requirements such as GAMSAT or UCAT. So just an example of an admission scheme. So Sarah, she got an ATAR of 90. So normally this would deny Sarah a provisional entry to medicine at UQ, but she does have some bonus points. So she's a confirmed rural applicant, so she gets 2 points. She also planned ahead and did specialist maths, and she also did one of the University Enhanced Studies program. In the regional universities, CQU and UniSQ both have advanced an enhanced studies program, and obviously UQ does as well. So she had 5 additional bonus points, making that her 90 plus 5 is now 95, and she's now eligible to be able to get into UQ, medicine at UQ, provided her UCAT score was adequate and that she was offered an MMI and was successful in her MMI, which would all have happened before she got her ATAR, of course. But this is just to demonstrate that you can get an ATAR of 90, and if you have those additional adjustment points, that 90 can convert to 95, making you eligible to get into medicine at UQ. Thanks. So now we'll move on to the student presentations. So I'm going to hand over to Eugene first to talk a little bit about his experience as a medical student. Thanks, Eugene.
Eugene, we just can't hear you. Sorry, your sound's not coming through for us. Just might be your AirPods not connected to the Bluetooth.
And just as a reminder, then we'll have Samantha, who will then present. She's currently a student based in Rockhampton in Year 2. And then we'll have Brianna, who's also a Year 4 student who's currently based in Brisbane. But we'll have Eugene first. How are you going, Eugene?
Okay, let's hope that works now.
Yeah, that does. Thanks.
Great. I love the technical issues today. Well, hello, my name is Eugene. So we've been asked just to talk a little bit about our journey into medicine. I'm very fortunate currently to be in my final and 4th year of medicine, but a couple of years ago, I graduated in the Greater Brisbane area in 2015 or 2016, I believe. I went through the provisional pathway. So back then we took what was called the UMAT, which is pretty much the same thing as the UCAT, and entered the UQ provisional program as a non-rural student. As my undergraduate degree, I was very fortunate to complete a Bachelor of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, where I spent a lot of time in the lab before realizing I'd rather spend a lot more time at the hospital. So in between, I was very honored to also take a year off from this journey and serve in the Australian Army. And UQ was very great, helpful there in being able to balance that time off and then come back into the program. So that's kind of my journey. I would say it may be a little atypical. Everyone's got their own kind of journey into medicine, but having started my journey in UQ, I've got a few pictures. I've been very blessed to have a lot of opportunities here. Probably starting the top left, that was actually from the end of last year when my brother, who's a UQ graduate himself from medicine, graduated at the end of last year. So that's us celebrating. And then different pictures come from societies, conferences, and even just playing volleyball up in Bundaberg. So last year I was based at Bundaberg Rural Clinical School, and then I jumped down to Toowoomba this year for my clinical placements. So that's a quick insight into my journey, and I'm really excited to just answer any questions and encourage all of you guys to apply to medicine. It's a great place.
Thank you, Eugene. Samantha, do you want to share yours?
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha. I'm currently a 2nd year medical student, which means I'm still in phase 1 of medicine. So I do a lot of theories for now. I currently am in Rocky, but for the last year we were in St. Lucia just because the program is very new. So as you can see in the slide here, there's a lot of studying, there's a lot of medical science. Recently, University of Queensland has introduced this team-based learning, which is very beneficial for all kinds of learners. And yeah, we do a lot of rural immersions. But before I was in medicine, I did my undergraduate degree from the Central Queensland University, but this is not to say the same program as what you guys are being presented right now. I was very unfortunate to be at that cutoff edge, so I had to sit the GAMSAT, and fortunately I am here now. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Samantha. And Brianna.
Good evening. So my name's Brianna. So a little bit about my journey. I grew up in a rural area for sort of a few years in my childhood and then relocated to Brisbane, where I completed my high school there. I did the International Baccalaureate at a school in Brisbane, and I was really interested in medicine for a long time. So I really studied hard to kind of, make sure to get good grades in school. But I actually wasn't, aware of how tricky the UMAT, or now the UCAT, was. So I attempted to apply through the provisional entry pathway. I achieved an IB score of 42, but unfortunately didn't have a very competitive UMAT score, so was not offered a place in the provisional entry scheme. However, I went on to study at UQ for my undergrad, studying a Bachelor of Health Sciences, majoring in public health. And through that degree, I studied for the GAMSAT and made sure to study hard as well for my coursework. And I then applied to the the graduate entry pathway into medicine with UQ. So I sat the GAMSAT and then applied, and then went through to sit on for the MMIs at UQ. And I'm currently in my 4th year of the medicine degree. I've had a lot of really, really great experiences at UQ, made a lot of friends, had a really great mix of social and academic growth, joining lots of societies, meeting a lot of really great mentors and doctors, and also making a lot of really great friends along the way. You can see some of those photos here. I guess it's really important to me to have a good mix of social and study as well. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey into medicine.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all 3 of you for sharing your journeys into medicine at UQ. Okay, so I think we've got some question and answer time. So I've got a few questions for each of you. So Eugene, you're first up. So can you share with us, what are the advantages of studying in regional and rural locations from your perspective?
I'm definitely passionate about encouraging people to study regionally and rurally. I think the biggest advantages you'll have is it's a close-knit community. That starts for both the students around you. A lot of the students usually get to know each other quite well, and also includes for the doctors and the hospitals you're at. I was fortunate to become quite close friends with a lot of the doctors, and you get more opportunities too. You get more opportunities to get hand-on, get involved in surgeries, get involved in seeing your own students. And I think just in a general sense, going regional and rural can be quite rewarding in that it gives you a lot of opportunities to learn quite in that first-hand experience, and get in those smaller, more closer communities, as well as fingers crossed, the regional and rural life, at least to me, was very appealing. People, to an extent, I liked the beachside life. So it's I think Bundaberg had a bit of a calling with enjoying my weekends and afternoons watching the sun, watching the waves. But other than that, it's a smaller community often, which means people are closer, supportive of one another, and it just gives you a lot of opportunities to learn and grow.
Fantastic. Yeah, I hear that from other students over the years. Thanks. Samantha, so what inspired you to study through the regional medical pathway in Central Queensland, and what has been your current highlight of studying in Rockhampton so far?
So personally, I decided to join the RMP because of my family, and I already know some resources there because I've worked in Rockhampton for a while. I haven't mentioned this, but I'm also a mature age student. And since I've lived in Rocky, I know how much the need is for medical practitioners locally, especially that for example, like there are surgical rooms at the hospital that are used as storage rooms due to short staffing. So even though we have the facilities, we just don't have the people to do them. There's also a lot of doctors that fly in and out from Brisbane. This can affect the continuity of care for some patients to a degree. But studying in Rocky, it's small enough to have big opportunities, like Eugene said. Like you get to talk to doctors, you get to do a lot of hands-on learning. But it's also big enough that you still have a lot of things to do, like community events to go to, outdoor activities when you're not studying, of course, when you have extra time. But I believe also that you get extra points for having a rural training when you apply for a specialty in the future. And also being a BMP, I think it also puts me at an advantage because, like Rita said earlier, there's three years of return of service for you for 18 years. And if I get into the internship at where I am, that already shaves off like half of my obligations. And just for the highlights, there's actually a couple. So I like in medicine in general, I like meeting like-minded people because I think it's hard to get through medicine without the support network of people that understands your priorities and your workload. And clinically, I've been involved in patient care as early as childhood because of the new curriculum that we have. So I've seen echocardiograms, I've been involved in diabetic foot care, taking patient histories, ward rounds, and I actually look forward to every day I spend in hospital. But also another highlight is Beef Week is also coming up. So Rockhampton is a beef capital of Australia. And what the Rural Clinical School is planning to do is that we'll do health checks for everyone that participates.
Excellent. Yes, that'll be an exciting week. Next week, I think it is, isn't it? Beef Week.
Yeah, first week of May, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for being part of that. That'll be great. Brianna, you've got the next question. On average, how many hours do medical students need to go to university on average on a weekly basis? And do you think there's enough time to have a part-time job, or how do you fit in extracurricular activities?
Yeah, sure. I think this is a really good question. So the timetable tends to differ, I guess, depending on what phase of the medical program you're in, but you can typically expect to be attending some formal learning activity 5 days a week, that being Monday through Friday. So in the first 2 years of the program, there's typically quite a lot of lecture-based learnings, tutorials, and on-campus learning activities. When I was in that phase of the medical program, we would have often lectures in the morning and then tutorials in the afternoon. So quite busy days. However, I found that learning to be really helpful now that I'm in the clinical part of the medical degree. It can be challenging adjusting from undergraduate life or even high school to now quite intensive sort of lectures. There's a lot of content to get through. And then once you're in the sort of later phases of the program, you're having a lot more clinical exposure, being on placement, again, full time, Monday through Friday, all day. I was on placement today, completing my anesthetics rotation. I got to the hospital around 7:30, and I left probably around 3:30 today, 4 p.m. But each day varies depending on what type of clinic you might be in. So definitely expect full-time commitments, however, with some changes across the program. However, having said that, I think it is really, really important to make sure you have a life outside of medicine. And if anything, keeping up with your activities, your extracurriculars, your jobs is going to make you a more well-rounded doctor. I think I learned the hard way through my undergraduate degree that just, having your head buried in the books is not the way to go about it, and you'll actually burn out in the long term. I actually balance 2 or 3 part-time jobs through medicine. So one being doing things like this as a student ambassador. I also work as a lab assistant for a pathology company and do a lot of tutoring with high school students as well. So it's definitely possible to have a job and a life and extracurriculars as well. UQ offers a lot of clubs and societies run by students for students that I've found to be really rewarding to kind of make a more holistic journey and also make a lot of friends along the way as well.
Wonderful, great. Thanks for that. Eugene, what are your tips around preparing for university exams and medicine exams? What are your tips?
I think I guess the biggest thing with preparing for university or medicine exams is, I guess, for me, is noticing that learning in medicine is a bit of a marathon and not a sprint more than anything. One of the things about medicine, whether you love it or not, it's that you're signing up to a lifelong journey of learning. There's always more learning, whether it's now in med school or many years in the future, which I'm very passionate about. But yeah, that's just how it is. To be honest, in my schooling years, I'm going to be honest, my preparing for examinations would probably be closer to a sprint, a bit of a cram. I think medicine does a good doing in hopefully encouraging a lot of people to start to change that and kind of building on your knowledge. Personally, I focused on understanding the core concepts, really getting a grasp of the important kind of concepts, and then using my experiences in hospital through the medical program to consolidate these. I think just today, as an example, I'm currently at the emergency department. So an example of that would be somebody coming in with a failing liver in the emergency department that I got to see first, talk to them, examine them, and make up a bit of a plan to talk with the doctor to be able to see what the next steps forward is. And things like that really, that real world learning, I think, will make the biggest difference in being able to become confident in your understanding of medicine. But that said, I think the good thing about tertiary education is that it's always an adult learning environment, and that's just my personal experience and way of learning and getting prepared for exams, and everyone has their own.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Samantha, what do you think if someone doesn't like gory things? Do you think this is a problem becoming a doctor?
Thanks, Rita. That's a very interesting question, but this is something I've come across in medicine. Medical students who are actually scared of blood or squeamish of blood, they do exist somehow. It depends on how you view gory. Although there are specialties that do not get their hands like down and bloody, if I may say, it depends on how you look at it in general. So, it just comes with the territory. So studying medicine and the human body, it's almost unavoidable for a junior doctor not to see trauma, especially Rita mentioned earlier that when you're an intern, you're supposed to have rotations in medicine, surgery, and emergency medicine. It's also important to know that you have support available. Being in medicine, it's a team effort. And as long as you let your support team know what your capacity is, most of the time, people can make adjustments for that. However, it really is important to know that blood, sputum, and open wounds will always be a part of medicine, which most of people, they will come to terms with it. And once you get past it, you can choose how you wish to practice in the future, like maybe in psychiatry, hematology, radiology, or pathology. I know it sounds counterintuitive when I say hematology, but mostly you look at slides anyway. But even in these specialties, blood and organs may still be involved to a minimum. So it depends on your definition of gory. And if you see through the situation or not, you can choose your specialty in the future, which lessens that risk for you.
Great, thanks for that, Samantha. Now, Brianna, do you have any tips or what do you think someone in high school can do to give them the best chance to get into medicine?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rita. I think a few different things would probably be helpful in high school. First and foremost, make sure you're taking care of your well-being. It's really important going into a profession such as medicine where you're committing to being a lifelong learner, that you really are well within yourself, because you can't help others if you are unwell as well. And also thinking about your options in the long term. As we've discussed tonight, there are a lot of different entry requirements that are important. So I think it's important to have a sit down, maybe with some family or friends, and consider if this is really the pathway that you're wanting to choose, and make sure you look through the different prerequisites that might be required. And then hopefully you might, be a bit more prepared than I was and start preparing for the UMAT or the UCAT, sorry, a bit more adequately, because that's a really important part of the selection criteria. I think obviously making sure you're studying effectively so you can ensure you get the highest ATAR possible. But also, like I mentioned earlier when I was kind of talking about my journey, also ensuring that you're enjoying your life as well. So doing extracurriculars that you find enjoyable, doing subjects that you find enjoyable. So not just picking all of the hard, physics, maths, chemistry, just because you think it might look good for an application. Pick the subjects that you're actually interested in, because that's where you're going to perform the best.
Great advice there, Brianna. Thanks. So a couple of questions that I might take an answer for that we've often get at these events is, do students stay in the one location or move around to different locations? So yes, students do get a variety of experiences. So Greater Brisbane clinical students, Greater Brisbane sort of students will rotate through different Brisbane hospitals. But as I said as well, you also do get the opportunity to undertake placements in the rural and regional areas as well. They're just shorter. They're just not, you're not based there for the whole time. So yes, you'll get different experiences and you'll need to go to different locations. When you're based in general practice, that could be anywhere as well. It's not possible to be able to ensure that if you're a Greater Brisbane student that the general practice you're at will be close to home necessarily. You might have to travel a little bit around Brisbane to get to your general practice. So there is a bit of travel within Brisbane as a Greater Brisbane. With the rural clinical school, you will be based at one of the regions of either Darling Downs Southwest, Central Queensland or Wide Bay, but you also get opportunities both in the hospital. So predominantly the clinical placements are more in the hospitals, the regional hospitals, so Rocky Hospital, Bundaberg Hospital, Hervey Bay Hospital, Toowoomba Hospital. But you'll also have rural placements, so out in small rural towns. So you might be in Theodore, or you might be at Yeppoon, or you might be at Roma or Charleville, but that won't be for the whole time. That's when you go for shorter stints in those smaller rural towns. And then also within the rural clinical school, when you're based in either Rockhampton, Bundaberg, Hervey Bay or Toowoomba, you also have both hospital placements as well as community placements. So we have general practice placements as well. So there's a mix of experiences. So we want to make sure that students have get a whole breadth of understanding of the core components of medicine, both tertiary hospital, metropolitan hospitals, regional, rural hospitals, and also hospital practice, but also community practice. We know that that general practice is a really important part of healthcare in the community, and that strong primary healthcare is actually what leads to the healthiest communities as well. And there's good evidence there. So we want to make sure that we give students plenty of experience and time in general practice to see what that's like, because you get a lot of time in the hospitals as well, because obviously that's where the other specialties are based. So you get a mix, so that's great. Does everyone do the same placements is another common one. It's not exactly the same placements because not everyone's going to have a placement at Royal Brisbane and not everyone's going to have a placement at Hervey Bay Hospital, but everyone will have a comparable placement. So they'll have a placement in a medical ward with the medicine team when they're doing their medicine placement. They'll have a general practice placement in general practice. They'll have, so the placements types are the same. They're not going to be just exactly the same because we can't have everyone in the same locations. But you get a variety. So that's the beauty, I think, and I heard a little bit from each of the students around the variety that you get in the medical program, whether you're based in Greater Brisbane or at the rural clinical school. You will have a variety of experiences, and sure, they'll be slightly different, but our course and our medical program is based on a learning outcomes program, and you can achieve learning outcomes in many different settings, and somebody might achieve one learning outcome in the in the cardiology ward, but it may also be achievable in a general medicine ward in the regions, because that's where the cardiology patients are in the regions. They don't necessarily have the subspecialties, but the patients are still there with those same problems. So there is a variety, and we ensure that students can meet the learning outcomes. Our medical program is accredited by the Australian Medical Council, and that means that we have to make sure all of our graduates meet the requirements of the MD program, no matter where they're learning that, and that they all have the same, we can vouch that they've got the same competencies when they graduate, so that they can look after patients safely in the supported environment as an intern. So just remembering, when you graduate, you from medicine, you become an intern, but you're then still supported and you're still supervised. You have a lot more responsibility, obviously. You did as a student, you're not making the final decisions and you're not prescribing and ordering the tests alone, but as an intern, you're still supervised and given support and guidance along the way. And that's a really good thing that we have in Australia, is that there is requirements that junior doctors, especially the PGY postgraduate years 1 and 2, you're well supported as well. The other question that a lot of students, future students ask is about scholarships, and there are a bunch of scholarships available at UQ. So please make the time to look at this scholarships page. And we really recommend that if you think you want to go for one, go for it. There's no harm in applying for a scholarship. The only scholarship you will miss out is the one you don't apply for. There's no way you can get that scholarship. So please have a look at the various scholarships. There's a lot of different scholarships available, generally for students, and so that's, for your undergrad degree, if you're doing that wherever you are. UniSQ and CQUni also have a bunch of scholarships as well. So if you're going through the provisional entry pathway through the medical pathways in Darling Downs Southwest or the CQ Wide Bay Regional Medical Pathway, make sure you go have a look at the UniSQ and CQU's scholarships pages. And then if you're coming through UQ for the undergrad, have a look at UQ's pages. But there's also some medicine specific scholarships as well. And some of them are relevant at different levels of years of the medical program as well. So some are there for, say, people in the final year of the medical program. Others are eligible in different stages of the program. So there are a lot of ways to seek help financially. Obviously, there's also, if you are having financial troubles, you can also seek guidance and support from the medical student support team and the university's student support team around giving you information around, what support, financial support you might be able to achieve, access as well. And obviously, some people will access financial support through Centrelink as well. So I think that was about the scholarships. The next question I've got for any of the panelists to answer, if whoever wants to jump in first, or you all can give your thoughts. Does anyone have any other advice around someone who might be considering medicine as a career? What's your advice? Who wants to go first? Samantha?
Hi, sorry. I saw Eugene take off his mic and I'm like, oh wait, I should mute. But thanks, Eugene. Yeah, so anyone who wants to get into medicine, my advice is that all in all, medicine is an act of service. I know you probably heard it somewhere, so cheesy. But agreeing with Brianna, like take care of yourself, eat your veggies, soak in some sunlight, drink your water, and rest. Because there will be times that it will get very hard to study and to work. So what matters is that you manage to mitigate your allosteric load by maintaining your health. That way, if that time comes, you still have some power in you to stay grounded. And also do not quit so easily as well. They say medicine is for smart people, but more than being smart, it is for people with grit. So take rejections as redirections. And just don't do it for financial gain. That to me, that's very short-sighted. Like Eugene said earlier, it's a long game. You have to have stamina, and if financial gain is your ultimate goal, there are many other opportunities out there, many other degrees. Do it because people deserve to have carers that actually care, and do it so that your family and other people's family are well taken care of. And just one question in the Q&A section that I can read. How is ZQ like for med students late to medicine? So mid to 20s and those with dependents and children. So I actually have some classmates that do have kids. I'm also late 20 myself, although I do not have kids, but I know that UQ supports students with those kind of lifestyles. And I think UQ is changing the landscape where it's not just medicine that you have, it's medicine and then you have a life as well. Because UQ is cultivating an environment where it's not just medicine. We need healthy carers for other people.
Right. Anyone else want to, Eugene or Brianna? Brianna,
Yeah, I'll jump in there as well. I think, yes, Samantha had some really great thoughts on that. Another thing I found helpful was really trying to get as much information and stories from people who are in the fields of medicine and also other healthcare professionals. I think when I was at sort of my early high school stage, I knew I was interested in a career in healthcare, but I guess trying to narrow down what domain exactly that was important for me. I tried to go to a lot of webinars like you are all attending tonight, also attending lots of university open days, and then talking to family, friends, friends of friends who were in different healthcare careers, and trying to get an understanding of what a day in their life would entail. And kind of, I guess it's important to understand the bread and butter of each profession, because that's sort of what's going to be your livelihood for the next few years, especially as junior doctors. I found that really helpful. especially when you're trying to, pick what subjects to take in high school. Each have their own different entry requirements. So having a good idea which pathway exactly you want to take is important.
And Eugene?
Might be lucky last. Yeah, definitely agreeing with everything Samantha and Brianna said. Just wanted to emphasize again, I think they both brought it up, that priority of self-care. It's a long journey, and making sure you take care of yourself will do a big term in being able to take care of others into the future. I like the quote that practicing medicine's a privilege, not a right. And it's a great career where you get to serve others for many years. And you get to make a career out of, helping and serving others. And that's amazing. But just being very clear, especially at an early stage of, having a clear reason why you are interested in going into medicine. It makes a big difference instead of just doing it potentially because it looks good financially, or there's some kind of, I think there's a little bit of mystique around it. And just being clear that what the reasoning for it is makes a big difference. And go rural. That's the big one I want to emphasize. Go rural. It's a great time.
Thanks, Eugene. I do like that. Obviously, as director of the Rural Clinical School, we love to have students who are interested in rural medicine coming to join us and to be able to serve rural communities. But that said, that's not for everyone, and the Greater Brisbane Clinical School certainly does offer an excellent program for students as well. And if that's where you want to work and live, that's fine too, obviously, as well. But rural is great too. So next one was around maybe, and Samantha's already shared some of her highlights already. Brianna, what do you think is your biggest highlight of your time in medicine so far?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I probably can't really nail it down to one specific highlight, but I think for me, what I've really enjoyed this year and also last year as well was really drawing my knowledge that I've learned throughout my undergrad and the first two sort of more preclinical years of medicine into practice, and kind of having a few aha moments when the theory that I learned in the textbooks actually is coming into play, where I'm seeing a clinical sign in a patient that might be, in the ED or in theatre, and kind of bringing that knowledge together and being able to provide a treatment to a patient that's actually really going to positively impact their life, as well as being able to take, have a chat with a patient and listen to them. And I guess that's one of the luxuries as a medical student. We often tend to have a little bit more time than maybe some of the more busy clinicians, and sitting down, getting to hear their story, talking with them, and kind of helping piece their aspects of their lives in with the medical issues that they might be presenting with, has been a real privilege. And I guess it's those moments that has really reinforced that this is a career that I want to pursue.
Great. Eugene, anything to add about your biggest highlight of the degree?
I could probably have a specific moment. I was lucky to be in Gundawindi for, you guys know the town, just about 2 hours south of Toowoomba, doing my rural placement there, and was told to rock up to hospital at 6 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, which was interesting. But as I rocked up, we got into scrubs, and I was very fortunate to assist in delivering a baby. So I think sometimes you get a few moments which are just will always stick with you, and being able to, I guess, lift up a baby out of someone and show it to the mother is a pretty rewarding thing and pretty amazing. You don't really get to do that anywhere else. Absolutely.
Yes, I still remember when you share that, my first delivery of a baby as well. It's a very exciting time. Similarly, I just as a highlight, I still remember the first time I took out an appendix as the lead surgeon as a medical student, and that was a pretty exciting time as well. Obviously, I had another surgeon over me, but yes, those practical skills are wonderful, aren't they? I just a couple of questions. One for first up, just Brianna, a couple of the questions is around the GAMSAT and maybe Samantha as well. Preparation for GAMSAT. What's your advice on preparation for GAMSAT?
Yeah, I think there's probably no hard and fast rule in terms of preparing for these types of exams. The UCAT and the GAMSAT alike are really nothing like anything else, especially exams in high school or in undergrad. These are quite different and they really challenge your way of thinking. For me, I sat the GAMSAT 3 times. The first time I didn't really undertake a lot of preparation. I was sort of, again, unsure as to sort of how best to prepare. And I found that that first time was really insightful to show kind of what the exam entailed and really gave me a lot of insight at how I should best prepare next. And then for my subsequent sits, I took about 3 months or more to prepare, making sure I was doing a bit of preparation each day. There are a lot of different resources available, lots of free resources available online on YouTube, as well as practice questions. And I think that's probably the resource that I found to be most helpful. But also using those resources and timing yourself. I think a lot of people tend to underestimate how important it is to actually prepare for these exams under time conditions and replicate how the exam will actually feel like on the day. So doing those exams and then kind of not just throwing those exams away after you finish with them, but going back and critically reflecting on how you performed and specifically the questions that you got wrong and why you got them wrong, and kind of workshopping maybe like a work solution or working with friends to kind of work out how you can improve from there. And doing lots of reading widely, reading the news and looking at kind of world events, I guess, was important for the GAMSAT, kind of having a more well-rounded understanding to critical reasoning.
Great. Samantha, would you add anything there?
I think Brianna has got it pretty like spot on. I could not add any more except for the fact that really do go on the free sources. They are very good resources on YouTube. That's what I've used. And just practically, as much as possible, if you can, stay a little bit off of Reddit, because while studying and, you know, hammering your self-confidence with everyone else that's getting a good GAMSAT score that can't get into medicine, I feel like that affects you mentally. Therefore, it affects you taking the exam, because, you know, self-confidence is key to examinations. You can get into there and you can just have a clear mind because you think, oh, you know, I'm not thinking that anyone else is better than me. I'm just here to take an exam. Rather than having that mental load of, oh, everyone has a better score than me, I might not be able to get in.
Great.
I wish someone said that to me before taking the GAMSAT.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thanks for that. Another question that maybe Eugene, you could answer this one. If you could return to high school, would you have changed, or what subjects would have you chosen to help prepare for medicine, or any change to what you did in high school?
I think I'm going to follow, I think it was Brianna who said this, which is just do what you're interested in. There's definitely a few subjects that will help, at least in points wise. I think I'm going to let actually reader confirm those, but there may be a bit of considerations with the points you can get to help your ATAR. But at the end of the day, the subject personally and in my individual experience that I thought helped me most, potentially from high school all the way to medicine, was philosophy and reasoning. More than my advanced mathematics or chemistry and it was definitely the one I enjoyed the most in high school. So and ones that I still kind of look into my time in hospitals and as a medical student. So really just enjoy, pick what you like, because what you like often becomes what you're good at.
Yeah, thanks. Any other advice from Brianna or Samantha on that?
Yeah, I definitely think I would echo those sentiments. I guess for the people at home who probably want to know the nitty-gritty details, I took biology, chemistry as my sciences, and I think, like Eugene was mentioning, do the other subjects that you like. I found that I liked those subjects, but they also conveniently were useful for a career in medicine. And I find myself really grateful that I did, particularly biology in high school, as I found that I was really well prepared for my undergraduate studies, looking at human anatomy, the cells, and how that integrates into a whole system, and also through into medicine. But again, everyone has their own journeys and subjects that you find interesting. So I guess there's no really right or wrong way to go.
Great, thanks for that. I'm actually just having a little look at some of the questions on the chat there, and I did have a question for you guys. I've lost that there. I think just one of the questions that has come up around, if you come through the graduate, one of the provisional entry, you can do, if you come through the provisional entry at UQ, there are a range of courses that you can do. And if you go to the website, you'll be able to see that. But you do need to make sure whatever that you do is that you meet the prerequisites in that your undergraduate degree. So that's really important that if your undergraduate degree can be a range of things, but you need to make sure you've met those requirements. If you're coming through a graduate pathway and you don't get in through the provisional pathway, again, if you're whatever that bachelor degree is, you need to make sure you meet those prerequisites. Just to let you know, those who are coming through the medical pathways in the regions, those undergraduate degrees at UniSQ and CQU do obviously meet the prerequisites as well. So they're embedded in those, so you don't have to look for anything to make sure that we've made sure that those undergraduate degrees do meet those requirements as well. Oh, that was a question. Yeah, so somebody talked about the MMIs. Do you think any advice around preparing for MMIs? Did you guys do the MMIs? Or Samantha, you certainly would have. Yep. The MMIs are a newer entry requirement or barrier sort of process, but it has been around for a few years now. Samantha, your thoughts on preparing for the MMIs?
Preparing for the MMIs, just because I'm a mature age student, so definitely having a view on the world for like 28 years has definitely helped me. Also, if you're a younger applicant getting into jobs, having like volunteering in, let's say, a hospital, clinic, or even having jobs at Woolies where you are facing customers, facing people, as long as you know how to speak to people, I think you'll hit MMI, because MMI is really just a test on how you would talk to people, how you would provide service to people. It isn't like the GAMSAT where you are calculated based on a specific measure. It is just to introduce yourself, and as long as you carry yourself gracefully, I feel like you will get through MMI.
Yeah, thanks. Any other thoughts from the others?
Yeah, I actually found the MMI to be quite enjoyable, as it was an opportunity to discuss, your thoughts about the world and lots of important topics like ethics or things like teamwork, really important domains for medicine with other people. I think maybe people tend to see it as a bit daunting. So what I did in terms of preparation was practicing with my friends. Like Samantha mentioned earlier, in terms of GAMSAT, there's lots of resources available widely online. The MMI is something that is not unique to UQ. A lot of medical schools across Australia and also worldwide do the MMI, so you can find example questions that other universities have asked. And I just made sure to practice with my friends and also kind of mimic the situation that you will be using as well. So at UQ, the MMIs are run online. So I also would record myself on something like this on Zoom or with my camera, and then go back and watch that recording and kind of try to critique myself and see where I maybe could have changed the way I worded a response or anything else that I might add.
Great, thanks for that. And I think when I've spoken to students over the years, they've often talked about to me as well that for the MMIs that just need to be yourself. And I think if you just be yourself, that's actually what we're assessing, is you as a person, who you are, and we can tell if you're trying to put on an act of being something you are not, because it doesn't come across authentic. It comes across stilted, and that's not what we want. We want to know who you are. We want to know that you are kind and compassionate. We want to know that you would work with integrity, that you are interested in others, that you want to help, those sorts of things. So Certainly, I don't think you have to prepare a lot for MMIs or practice. There are some, you can go to the website and you'll see some information there around that. Around the MMI, and I think there's a sample one that you can look at, so just so you get a bit of a feel. So yeah, I think that's good advice that both Brianna and Samantha have given there as well. Another question that's come up in the chat is a little bit about the difference between UCAT and GAMSAT tests. Certainly when I've talked with students, they all tell me that the GAMSAT is harder than the UCAT. I think, Brianna, are you able to make a comment on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a common question other students have asked me as well. I think at the core, both exams are assessing the same things, which is, the domains of your critical thinking, your problem solving, your emotional reasoning. So what they're assessing is not different, but I think sort of the way that they assess it is a little bit different. So the UCAT I found was a bit more focused on analyzing things like puzzles or sort of maths or different types of diagrams, whereas the GAMSAT I found to be a lot longer and more challenging. The GAMSAT has 3 distinct sections, one which is sort of more like a reading comprehension, a second section where you're required to write 2 essays, and then a third section which is science-based, but it's not typically science that you could just study from a book. It's using your problem solving to try and answer questions in kind of like a science framework. So I think if I could go back to my younger self, I would have advised her to prepare a little bit more for the UCAT, because I think maybe when you're in high school, you don't have as many demands of, trying to balance working as well as getting, really good grades in uni. Obviously, your schoolwork is really important, but it might be a little bit easier to balance there, and perhaps is generally a little bit more easier than the GAMSAT. I don't know if anyone else has any other points or similar experiences. But having said that, it's not impossible, and like myself, if you don't get it on the first try, there's always a plan B. And if you're really determined to make it into medicine, you will get there eventually.
Okay. There was a question, some attendee for an international student. So just to be aware, international students can apply for the Greater Brisbane Clinical School, not able to apply for the Rural Clinical School. So the Rural Clinical School is for domestic students. But on the website, there is the information for internationals. They can apply for both the provisional and the graduate entry as well. The same criteria needs to be kind of met. So equivalent of the ATAR or the IB scores, need to sit the UCAT, multiple mini interview and things for the provisional entry, and the graduate entry needs to meet the same requirements as well. So and obviously English for people from a non-English as first language needs to meet a certain level of proficiency as well. So that's just a bit of information. I saw there was a question about internationals as well, which we didn't really address here, thinking this was probably going to be more of a domestic people from Australia, domestic and New Zealand. So as well, looking at this. Okay, we are just about out of time, and so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And I'd particularly like to thank Brianna, Eugene and Samantha for their time this evening and sharing their insights, which has been great. Apologies that we maybe haven't been able to answer every question in the Q&A, but there is a lot of information on the websites, both at UQ and if you want to know more about the medical pathways with UniSQ and CQUni. I apologise again for my computer glitches at the start, so apologies that that interfered with the presentation as well. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our future students and marketing team in the background to make tonight possible as well. And Karina, will I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you so much, Rita, and everyone joining us online this evening. It's been great to be able to speak with all of you and to hear both from Rita and our current students. I can see that we got a lot of questions submitted through the Q&A, and I'm very sorry we weren't able to get through all of them. Please make sure if you do have any questions that we weren't able to address, please send them through to our Ask uq.edu.eu email address, and we'll make sure that our contact centre team are able to get in touch with you and follow up. We will be hosting our event again tomorrow night in person at our St. Lucia campus here in Brisbane. So if you'd like to come along and meet with us in person, we would love to see you there. So that brings us to the very end. We've run perfectly on time. So thank you once again, everyone. And we hope to see you in the future soon at our medical school. Take care, everyone, and good evening.